Hey guys, and welcome back. My name is Monique, the artist behind Art with Mo. Today we are going to be working on a water painting. Have I ever painted water before? Not to my memory, but we're gonna get started because it is part of a gallery show and I really want to be able to get this done and turned in on time. So what I'm going to start with is a prepped canvas. I already gessoed this canvas 3 times, and then I also sanded just a little bit. At the time I didn't have the correct sandpaper, so I just tried to get this canvas as smooth as I could, but also I left a little bit of texture just because I think that adds to a painting. I started with the sky and tried to just make it darker up top and lighter below and kind of have a decent blend in between the two colors. And then after that, I moved on to the water section. I made the bottom of the water quite dark and I tried to paint the sides of my canvas, at least with this one, so that I don't have to repaint it later, and then that way it's already done and out of the way. So I'm going to go back and forth and just try to blend out the dark tone of this water. I used a lot of blue and green in this piece. I'm only actually using red, yellow, blue, and a little bit of white. So I used black to saturate the color, and then I used white to just brighten up the color a little bit, especially at the top whenever I created the sky. Now, I've never painted water before, and so I looked up a lot of YouTube videos of people painting water, and especially with acrylic paint. I haven't painted water with acrylic paint before. I believe I actually have painted with gouache before in water, and that one I was just following a tutorial that I found. With this specific painting, I wanted to use my own reference and not copy somebody else. So I used a photo from Idaho, and my husband and daughter actually went out into the lake there and they were on these paddle boats. And that's actually the reference photo that I decided to use for this painting. And I didn't paint them in just because I don't know, I'm weird and I don't like people to stare at my family, but also I don't typically like painting people that I know or even drawing people that I know because it doesn't always turn out how I want it to. But maybe I should work on that and actually paint them more because I am more familiar with their faces. And so maybe that will help me with my accuracy when I do paint portraits and draw them. For this section of the painting, I am working on putting in waves. Now, I had no idea what I was doing. I just went up and down, up and down, up and down the painting. I did try to follow my reference as I was creating this painting, but once I got the hang of how the waves were actually supposed to look, I stopped looking at my reference, which I guess is okay because I wasn't looking for 100% accuracy. I just wanted to paint water and I needed a reference photo just to use as a guideline. So now I'm moving up to the mountains that are in the background of this painting, and I'm waiting for the bottom to dry because currently I don't like how it looks and I'm going to end up painting over it. So I am using the green and a little bit more yellow here, and with the trees I just went with a stippling motion and honestly just hope for the best, and I think it turned out pretty well. But I also don't keep the trees looking like this just because I wanted the hills in the background to be a little bit darker and to add a little bit more dimension. So when I was painting these trees, it was just really to map out where they were going to go because this portion of the painting does change just a little bit. In the reference photo, the hills are a little bit darker, so I wanted to map out these trees in the beginning, and then I realized how off the colors were. So I am going to go back in, and here's where I'm going to add in the darker green. And I notice when you're painting with acrylics, you want to add just a little bit more water. And that's what I did here because I was able to see the canvas underneath. And so if you add just a little bit of water, it'll help with covering the canvas a little bit easier. And here is another reason why I painted over the trees, because I was about to just go around the trees, but I felt like if I just painted over them and then repainted those trees back in, then it would make the process a little bit easier. And now that the bottom is a little bit more dry, I'm going to go in and add in some more waves. And here I kept doing that kind of up and down motion, but I was trying to connect the waves a little bit more. Instead of just going up with the brush stroke, I wanted to be able to come back down. Kind of like right here, I liked how the waves were looking, but the previous waves, they just had no connection. So I think the main point when you're creating water is to look at the direction of the waves and which way they're going. I'm almost getting the hang of the direction of the waves, but right here, I don't like how these ones look just because it's not entirely too realistic. And so it's just kind of playing around with what's going to work for your specific style. And I'm almost getting the hang of how I like the waves. And I feel like if I just go left to right instead of curving the brush upwards, then I can kind of get the waves to look more like waves. This painting actually has a lot of movement within it, which I really like because the original photo does have a lot of movement in the water, but I added a little bit more movement in this painting just because of the way the brush strokes were going. And here I'm almost getting the hang of how the waves are going. And so I'm just going to go back and forth and continue to add layers onto this painting so that it looks a little bit more realistic. And the nice thing about acrylic too is that you can always paint over the things that you don't like, which is something that I did a lot in this painting. But it was a nice learning experience because I was able to figure out what actually made the painting look like it was water. And again, I'm just going to go back and forth adding in color. When I have a second, I will add in the video that I watched to help kind of guide me in how to start the painting. And right here, I'm adding in more of that mid-tone color because honestly, I'm covering up my mistakes that I had because of the way the brush strokes were going. It just wasn't making the painting look right. And then after that, I'm going to go back into the hills just because it's dry enough now to where if I add any paint, it's not going to move around on me. So I'm going to add a little bit of depth into the hill here, and then I'll add in some trees and a little bit more detail. So now I'm going to go back in and add in those trees that I erased. I'm just kind of going with a base a little bit. So I'm adding a dark green in there, and then later on I'm going to go with that stippling motion like I am here, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that with all of the trees and add just a little bit more depth into the hills just to add some separation, not too much but a little bit. And I did mess up here, but good thing the layer underneath was dry because it wiped away just fine. And here I am using that stippling motion. I like that I added a base behind this bush just because it made the layering process and the stippling process a little bit easier. I wasn't able to see that green underneath the painting, but also some of it did peek through just because that lighter layer wasn't 100% dry, but that's okay because I can always just actually wait for it to dry a little bit more and then go ahead and layer on the paint. And here I am just blending out this lighter shadow with a dry brush. And I feel like the mountains or the hills are pretty much done. So I'm going to go in and add in some highlights here. And thank you guys for watching my videos. It does take a lot of time to make these videos, but I appreciate every single one of you for sticking around and watching them. It does mean a lot. Alright guys, well that is the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I was able to get this painting off in time, and I absolutely love how it turned out, especially for painting water for the first time with acrylics. You never know what type of art you're going to be able to create, especially when you're not comfortable with painting or even painting a different subject. So I am happy that I was able to finish this, and I like how it turned out. I hope that you like it as well, and if you did, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me something that you did this week that really made you happy. Okay, that's it. Thanks, guys, so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.